Welcome to the Starfighter Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Starfighter Podcast. We are going over episode 2 of The Bad Batch. Tonight, it's going to be another heavy spoiler review and breakdown of the entire episode. We're looking to pull out these maybe hidden gems, things that you might have missed. And so to help me steer the ship, of course, is Ethan. How you doing?
Good, man. Can't wait to go through this. I'm loving this series so far.
Yeah, same here. So before we get started, guys, continue to show us your support here on the YouTube channel. Help us build this community where we can all nerd out. Leave us a like, join the conversation, leave us a comment down below. Let us know how you enjoyed this episode. And of course, if you're not already, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you get our notifications. And of course, you can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever podcasts can be heard. And you can leave us a good review over there if you'd like. We'd appreciate it. All right, but let's get into it. So episode 2, Bad Batch, is called Cut and Run. And why don't we start out with our initial thoughts? I have this feeling that a lot of people are going to call this a filler episode. And I can understand that. However, I do think that there's an argument against that too, because I don't think that it's completely filler if we're making strides at pushing the overall story and developing characters more. And I feel like this really did that for two reasons. We saw some really cool things as far as helping us to understand this transition period from the clones and the Republic into the Empire, and I think we're going to build on that even more going forward. But then I think the bigger thing was also this relationship between Hunter and Omega, which again, I really like their dynamic. I like where that story is headed, I think, and looking forward to seeing more from them. But what are your thoughts on all this?
I wouldn't consider this a filler episode for kind of along the lines you were talking about. Is we get to get more character development between Omega and Hunter, which I think will be really important for this series. And kind of just gave us some. I thought it was nice going back and seeing Cut and just like not forgetting like the Clone Wars roots of it all, and just seeing how it's all going to kind of tie in together. And I think we get better idea as to how the story's going to go forward from here. Like we had Rex mentioned and some stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely don't think this was a filler. And I think it just kind of gave more to these characters than what we've seen before. And I think it just got us more comfortable with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, you enjoyed this episode too?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Same here. I mean, it was definitely slower paced and a little different than what we got in the first episode, but I think we can expect that from time to time, and that's okay. I still really enjoyed it, and there's some cool Easter eggs in this episode as well. So why don't we just get right into the episode? We'll start our breakdown, and we'll go into this opening scene. We get the Bad Batch, and we get Echo. They land on Seleucami in like this farm area, and we see that Omega is really taken back by the nature, even the dirt that she's seeing on the ground. We just really get the sense that she's been sheltered, and so what are your thoughts on this opening sequence and how we can see more that Omega has been? She's just lived a very different life until this point.
I think it explains a lot of the characters' curiosity like going forward, and I think it works really well with the story. I think we've had those issues with Ahsoka in the past at the very beginning, and it just didn't fit right. But I think this character and her mannerisms make a lot of sense, just with her background on Only Camino. So yeah, I thought just these small like scenes that they had really just added to it, and I don't I definitely think they were worth being there, and I enjoyed them a lot. And just kind of building on these characters more, and just getting some banter between the group as to it kind of just goes forward as to how the rest of the story is going to go. As these are soldiers that have been pretty much everywhere, and they're kind of having to take on the job of raising this girl. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see all of that.
Yeah, good points. And I think we'll talk a little bit more kind of about this narrative later on. What do you think about, again, really looking at deeper at this situation with her coming from just like a whole different world, and all she ever knew was this life on Camino, not really ever getting out? That's clear. Don't you get the sense that maybe she's had like a lot of tests done to her, and maybe she knows things possibly that she's not talking about quite yet? Because to me, I almost feel like this character could be kind of like an 11 type of character, like in Stranger Things. Those are
Yeah.
kind of like the vibes that I'm getting. But what are your thoughts?
I definitely think it's just different because I don't know how much she would really know as to stuff going on, and especially like her mutations or whatever they are going to be. Um, but I definitely think there's just an element of she's been on Camino and she was just like a medical assistant, like it's a very like more strict, not like childish life of any sort, and so I think going from that into this episode, just trying to get her to loosen up a bit around the group, I think was very interesting to see kind of how that played out. Um, but yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that she probably knows about or has some sort of clue about, especially when it comes to the clones and their background. So we even get a bit of that in this episode too. So I think what she knows is going to be limited to some extent, but from what other characters in this story will know, I think it'll definitely be helpful in progressing the story and probably helping out Crosshair in the long run.
Yeah, totally. So I need to correct something, and chime in here if you have any thoughts, maybe different thoughts on this with Wednesday's episode. Um, I had mentioned that like a Easter egg was seeing Cut LaQuaine with Saw Gerrera. And to be fair, I got that Easter egg from Star Wars Theory, who's the number one in Star Wars personality. So I got it
Yeah.
from him. Um, but now I'm thinking it doesn't make sense that he was there, and now we're going to um, J19. What is it, Salukami, and now he's here. Like, I'm starting to think that that wasn't him. What do you think?
No, I definitely think Cut stayed here the entire time.
Yeah.
It seems like his family has been struggling to get off world in the first place. So him being anywhere else, I don't really see that being possible.
Okay. Yes, I just
So,
wanted to
yeah.
clear that up, that that wasn't him in Wednesday's episode, but we do get all of them reunited here with Cut LaQuaine and his family. Again, Cut LaQuaine was the deserter clone that some of us know from the early episodes of an earlier episode of the Clone Wars. So we're back with him. They all have a meal together in their home, and Cut tells them that Rex had actually just passed through the day before, which I thought that this was really interesting. I think, we've been speculating kind of if we're going to see him, and so I'm gonna throw it over to you. Like, tell us what you're thinking as far as seeing Rex again, and then possibly Ahsoka, because they might be traveling together.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, we know we're gonna see Rex again in this series. It's been trailers and in the past. The funny thing is, through that entire
Oh,
conversation
maybe
they
I missed
had,
that in the trailer.
yeah, through that entire conversation they had, Ahsoka was never brought up. Like it was just Rex. You'd think they would
Yeah.
talk about bringing like a Jedi along, or just some other person. But yeah, I'm curious to see how that ends up, and it kind of lowers my expectations for seeing Ahsoka at all in the series, or at least in this first season, because I'm guessing there's going to be more. Um, but yeah, I think this conversation that they had and just kind of reuniting with Cut, I think was my main takeaway from this is that they had already known Cut before, and it was kind of just funny how even though he's a deserter, like they're laid back with it. Um, so I actually thought this was really interesting of a scene just to see them chilling and having a meal together.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I'm actually okay if we don't see Ahsoka. I mean, I think
Yeah,
cool if she does appear, but I'm okay with not seeing her again animated because I just think that the ending to Clone Wars season 7, like where we left things with her, was just like so perfect. Like I just don't need to see her again in animated because we're getting her live action show, and so that's really where I want to see the character more now.
yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Is I don't really see a purpose for Ahsoka to be in this story. Like I don't see what her like how she'd help move the story along really. So I definitely think it's possible, but I'm not really dead set on her being in this series and having to play a big part of it. I think it makes more sense to have someone like Rex along and kind of just move along with the Clone Wars, aspect of it, and seeing this different view on Order 66 that we've never really seen before.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on. Omega learns to play catch with two of Cut's children, and I feel like, and we'll touch on it later, but Hunter is starting to see like this is probably the life that Omega should have, right?
Yeah,
We definitely get a sense of that, especially later on. But Hunter and Cut end up going into the city, and they see this ship being impounded, like in the sky above them. And Cut tells them that the Empire is starting to tag like every single ship, and so we start to put the pieces together that Palpatine is really tracking everyone. He's starting to track everyone. And I feel like this is a little bit of a callback to um, season 2 of Mandalorian. If you remember, Mando talks about how his Razor Crest is pre Empire and it doesn't have a transponder. So again, it's just really cool the way that they put these little things in there and just like connect everything
yeah,
so well. Like they don't have to like make it always make something like a really big reveal, just like with the fine details.
yeah, for
We
sure.
see the stories and the universe is all connecting. Let me hear your thoughts on the way that we're seeing the Empire portrayed, um, and starting to see it in this series.
I think it was interesting just seeing the clones like under the Empire and kind of in this transitional period where that they're going to transition into recruited soldiers. So I think it was kind of just interesting because we've never really seen anything like that before as to how it transitioned. But it's obvious that this was part of Order 66. Like they're still going along with these, like this programming, to follow out the Empire's desires. So I think it's really cool just to see just how willingly they're going and doing these things. Like they are stormtroopers. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting to see this because we've never seen the Empire portrayed at this time period in live action or animated.
Yeah, and so to kind of go into those thoughts a little bit more, we next see some clone officers. They're kind of harassing a man and telling him that he needs to register for a chain code, which is essentially just a barcode that keeps track of all your whereabouts. And so this wasn't like a huge um, surprise to me. We know the Empire is pretty controlling, but I guess I didn't fully realize exactly to what extent they were controlling, and so I just thought that this was really interesting like how far they're going to track like literally everybody.
Yeah, I think it's funny just this transition again where they're going into such a controlled um, just galaxy, and it's trying. I think it's just a better way to keep everyone under control, and I think the fact that straight after Order 66 and all this, he's taking these measures really just goes to show how drastic this change was. Because this stuff wasn't able to really be implemented before because there was a war going on, and there's two different sides to it. So they were never going to be working together with something like that. But I think it really just goes to see how Palpatine had this plan of what he wanted with the galaxy, and it's definitely coming into fruition here.
Totally agree. So we cut back to the farmland, and Omega gets close to this Nexu, which again we have this callback now to Attack of the Clones. This is the same monster that attacks Padme in Episode 2, and Sula Quain, which is Cut's wife, and as well as Cut and Hunter, they all go to help her escape danger. And this is when Hunter begins to think that Omega would be better off with Cut's family. I think he really takes notice of just how perceptive that Cut and Sue are from a parental standpoint, because obviously, he's a soldier, and so he's kind of like on guard of himself, but now to think um, he has to think totally different, trying
Yeah,
to care for essentially what's becoming like his kid.
yeah, exactly. I definitely think that I think Cut's perspective on this and him being a father for so many years, but also not a soldier for so long. I think it's interesting seeing his perspective, especially from the face of a clone. And I don't know. I just seeing this again, seeing this relationship between Hunter and Omega kind of build is, I think, it's going to be very interesting going forward. That's why I liked Cut's input on it, and I wish there was a bit more, honestly, throughout this episode.
A question that I wanted to ask you, because I was definitely getting this from the episode, but like really a lot of shades of Mandalorian when it comes to Din Djarin and Grogu. Was this starting to become too much like, that duo and that dynamic for you?
I don't think so, and the reasoning for it is Grogu has a lot of personality, but I think Omega is a very different character than we've ever seen before. And I think having these very similar backgrounds between Hunter and Omega, but also very different, is going to be interesting going forward. So I also don't think that Din Djarin is nearly as much of a soldier as Hunter is, and they are very successful soldiers, and you kind of see that side of him come out a lot without this, like throughout this episode, and have a big part on the decisions that he makes.
Yeah, some good points that you make there. And I mean, Dave Filoni, he of course is heavily involved with this show as well as Mandalorian. So I think, like you were saying, Omega is a very different character, and I think that we're going to see that there's going to be a lot of distinctions between her and Grogu, and the two couples here that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that he's really going to take it into a different direction, and I feel like he's probably going to surprise us with some things as we start to learn more about Omega and her abilities.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that that's gonna really take us by surprise, especially with her abilities and all that, and kind of to see what her character is going to become.
So now Tech and Echo, they plan to get their ship seized so that they can get to the facility and that they can get some chain codes. Their plan seems to be working for the most part, but they're going to have to figure out a way to not get caught. And so Omega decides to take the chain codes and get them to Cut's family as well as Hunter. They're at the spaceport here,
Yeah.
And so, she's on her way over there. Uh, Again, Omega is really taking the initiative here, and I feel like this might speak to the character that she'll become later on in the series. Um, Kind of a little bit like Ahsoka. We definitely saw someone who had quite a bit to learn, and as her character arc progressed, um, she took on leadership roles multiple times. Do you think that's something that we might see from Omega?
Yeah, I think it kind of just goes. It's going to end up being what characters are introduced into this group, and this is a very elite uh, clone group, and I think it'll be funny to see how um, her learning in this environment is going to work. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, and did you want to take us into this interaction between Wrecker and the troopers as Omega is making her way to deliver the chain codes?
Yeah, I think it was just it's more Wrecker styled stuff where uh, he knocks out some troopers without really batting an eye. And I think it was like a funny little conversation with Omega, and it's just like showing again a different side of him that we haven't really seen before, where it's just like, all right, I'm gonna shoot everything and make some jokes here and there. So I think it was a more serious side of things, which I actually enjoyed a lot with the character. Um, but yeah, I'm actually starting to like Wrecker a lot more because I think there's a better balance within it. But he also can pop off and take out some clones. So
Yeah, with like a single hit, which is pretty crazy
yeah,
too.
yeah. I like how in the last episode too he punched him and um, the helmet just busted, like it was just cracked, and we like rarely get to see that stuff. I think we saw that at the end of season 7, but I think it's just fine to see like the extra detail with stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. So Omega hands the chain codes over to Cut, and he tells her that Tech accidentally made one extra by mistake. And this is where Hunter tells her that the extra one, the fifth one, is for her. And he's coming from a place where he feels like the guys and himself, they can't give Omega the life that she needs, that she deserves, and so he's telling her that she needs to go with Cut's family. And I feel like she was just completely crushed. I mean, she was like, "What did I do wrong? I really want to stay with you."
Yeah,
So that was a little bit sad. But Hunter leaves, but you can tell, he definitely feels bad. I think he is questioning whether it really is the right decision. But yeah, he leaves, and the others are trying to fight off some troopers because they're trying to um, take off in their ship and just get out of there, and they're kind of under fire here. But Hunter ends up taking out like one of the last troopers, and Omega comes back like just in time to get on the ship with all of them, and they take off. And now we get another moment to close out this episode with Hunter and Omega. They're sitting down in the ship and they're talking to each other, and Omega tells him that this is the life that she chose. This is the path that she chose. This is where she wants to be. And I also feel like, Hunter doesn't quite understand that Omega feels like they're really connected and that they're family. Not
yeah,
only because they're clones, but I think because they're all unique clones, and that there's only a few of them, and so Hunter says, if this is where you want to be, then this is where you'll stay, and that's how the episode closes out. Again, I feel like the episode was much slower than our first episode one, but I mean, there was just some really good things in this episode, and I like this closing scene too. Again, really emphasizes where things are headed with this relationship between Hunter and Omega, and that he cares for her again. The entire Bad Batch, they're all starting to really care for her as well, and I think that we're really going to establish like a close knit family here as we move forward. But what are your thoughts on this final sequence and closing out here?
I think it's just a great ending to, especially a slower paced episode like this, where they have a good moment like that, where you kind of get the sense that from there on out, they're not going to be trying to get rid of Omega. I think it was good to have that kind of conversation earlier in the season, so that, like, yeah, she's going to be a big part of this. So yeah, I thought that conversation they had was really good, and again, just building on that relationship that they have, because it looks like it's just going to be mainly Hunter kind of taking on this role. So I think striking that balance of him as a leader, but also like a father figure, will be very interesting going forward, and I'm glad they built on that.
Yeah, same here. Totally agree. Why don't we talk a little bit about some predictions? Maybe we have a few new predictions or some thoughts going forward in next week's episode. Is there anything that you have off the top of your head?
I don't really have any crazy predictions, but one thing I really appreciate about this episode is I love Echo and I love his backstory. Me and my friend would always talk about Echo and Fives. I think they're some really cool characters in the Clone Wars. So I think we got to see him in a bit more action, and just his design is so cool. I think they've done a great job, like kind of implementing him into this group. He still has the ARC Trooper like gown kind of deal and like skirt, and I think that's
Yeah, I
awesome
noticed
to
that.
see.
I noticed
Um,
that this episode.
yeah, I think it's just awesome to see him in action again, and it's kind of the same. Um, I just get a lot of Clone Wars vibes, and this series is very nostalgic so far, and I love it.
Yeah, same here. I feel like we actually gave a few different predictions in episode one, so I don't have too many off the top of my head either. But I know I'm just really curious to see where they take Omega's character, and I think that there's been some speculation online as far as her maybe having some wrong motives, or maybe actually being programmed and possibly will turn on the Bad Batch later on. I don't really think so. I tend to feel like, again, it's going to be a close knit family to the end.
Yeah,
um, I think we're gonna experience some losses, maybe even a big loss as we go forward.
yeah,
Um, but I think that she's going to stay on board, and that, like she said, this is where she wants to be, and I feel like that's pretty genuine. So I hope that they don't have a twist like that. But I
yeah,
guess
for sure.
if they do, hopefully it'll be done well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so those are my thoughts. And also, I think that there's still much more to learn about the Bad Batch,
yeah, for sure, for sure.
because I think Hunter is a really interesting character, and um, hopefully they'll dive into a little bit deeper things with, like you mentioned, Echo and Tech. And I'm also curious to see what's going to happen with Crosshair as well. Um, you know, thinking back to episode one, he started to kind of get on your nerves a little bit with his attitude. But
Yeah,
I mean, of course, it wasn't really his fault. It's the chip. But I mean, when he would pull off that knife maneuver, I was like, man, I kind of want him to stick around. Actually, like
yeah, yeah,
he's really cool.
for sure.
Um, he's really awesome. But yeah, so I mean, there's of course a lot of things up in the air, but we're looking forward to seeing and understanding all of it. And yeah, I think that's gonna pretty much do it for us and our breakdown tonight.
Yeah, yeah. I think we wrapped it up pretty well. This was a slower episode and not as much crazy stuff to talk about, but it was definitely an important one in character building. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important. So,
Yeah, absolutely. What do we have coming up next week?
well, more Bad Batch. We have that coming up. We do have a Wednesday show which I'm not. What are you thinking we're gonna do on that Wednesday?
I think we'll probably end up doing our live show. We've gotten some feedback from some people that want us to touch on some new Marvel news that's been coming out. So yeah, we'll plan on this coming Wednesday. We'll be doing an Everything Nerdy show, a live show at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And, we're going to touch on a lot of news when it comes to all things nerdy, entertainment, Star Wars, Marvel, and basically whatever you guys want. So, join if you're listening to us on the audio episodes, like on Spotify or Apple Podcast, feel free to tune in here and there to our YouTube show and join the conversation in the live chat, because we've been having a lot of fun on there with the audience and really getting to hear from you guys. So that's been a blast, and we'll look forward to that. And then, yeah, next Friday, Bad Batch episode 3, we'll be back, and then we'll put that episode out probably basically every weekend. We'll put out our episodes either Friday or Saturday. So that's what we have coming up. Ethan, it's been a great episode breakdown with you. Yeah, so we'll be back soon. Again, guys, subscribe here to our YouTube channel. Continue to show us your support on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. And we do have some really cool things in the works that we're going to bring to our channel, to our podcast here soon. So be on the lookout for that, because we're excited to show you some new things. But that's going to do it for us here at the Starfighter Podcast. We are signing out, and we will see you next time.